Welcome to the Design Thinker podcast, where we explore the theory and practice of design. Hosted by me, Dani, and
Me, Peter.
hey, Pete.
Hi, Dani. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Yes, good to see you again.
Good to see you. What are we talking about today?
Today, Dani, I'm looking forward to talking to you about the anatomy of an experience.
Experience is one of those words that is becoming a cliche.
Definitely.
We hear it. We talk about customer experience, employee experience,
User experience.
user experience, patient experience,
Yeah. Pet experience.
pet experience, something I care deeply about as
Yeah.
a parent. Do you think that we actually know what we mean? And here I'm using the royal we.
The royal we. I don't think the royal we, or even, I think it's hard to, it's one of the, yeah, I agree with you. It's a word that's become, maybe not a cliche, but it's certainly become a word that is used a lot more. And I feel like we're at the stage where the royal we, where we've kind of started using it without exploring it and defining it in a useful way. When we were talking about what we were going to talk about today, and I think it was you that came up with the anatomy of experience, that really appealed to me because I think it's experience, and experience has many different elements to it. And that's where the anatomy metaphor really resonated with me. So, okay, so we're in agreement so far. Experience, small words, lots of meaning behind it. And yeah, I was just looking forward to almost thinking out loud with you and exploring, getting your ideas and sharing mine with you around what it is and what it could be. And yeah.
Cool. So should we start where we always start with a definition? Let's get some definitions going.
For this more than almost any other, then we definitely should do that. Let's get into the definitions.
So for today's Google moment, let's see. What comes up when I first Google what is an experience?
Mm-hmm.
Practical contact with and observation of facts or events. The knowledge or skill acquired by a period of practical experience of something. An event or occurrence which leaves an impression on someone.
All of them are definitely relevant, but maybe the last one, an event or occurrence which leaves an impression on someone.
Mm.
That's most like the thing I think of when we talk about customer or user or team member experience. Um, an event or occurrence which leaves an impression on someone. Yeah.
Mm.
And then maybe I'll do my usual thing about the where it comes from, Latin. The Latin verb experire, meaning to try. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Try. Try something.
Which as a design thinker just makes my heart go, ooh.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes.
It's from the 1800s, if I'm looking at this graph right. Early 1800s.
Early 1800s when the mentions started to pick up by the looks of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes Latin, and then Old French, and then late Middle English.
Mm.
That's where it's evolved from. The last part of the kind of etymology is it comes from the same Latin origin as experiment and expert. I'd never
Mm.
even thought about that before. That's the experiment and experience are actually from the same, and expert. They're all from the same word, to try.
Look at that. We learned something in our own exploration. I also found it interesting that use over time,
Hmm. Hmm.
how it really starts to peak in the 2000s and late 90s.
Yeah, I've double clicked into that chart actually, and yeah, there seems to be definitely. It looks like maybe the 90s it starts to uptick, and then yeah, it's peaking and plateauing
Mm.
in the
It
2010s, 2020s. Yeah.
it almost follows very closely to the design thinking
Hmm.
trajectory.
I clicked into this is interesting actually. I've not done this before in these Google links, but I've clicked into one of these charts, double clicked into it, and it's taken me to clicking into a decade. It's taken me to links to a couple of books, the Experience Economy, B. Joseph Pine, James H. Gilmore. That was 2011. Product Experience, another book by Hendrik N. J. Schifferstein and Paul Heckert, 2011. So yeah, I think this reminds me, yeah, in the early to mid 2000s, there was lots of I came across anyway, lots of conversations, books, etc., that mentioned experience, customer experience, etc. Sorry, I
Yeah,
interrupted you. We can move on now. I finished nerding out on the Google definitions.
I'm actually very intrigued by this because this might be a good way to find my new reading materials.
Mm, yeah,
Click on a word and go down a rabbit hole.
yeah,
Okay, so coming back to the definition of experience, we're in agreement that in the context of design thinking, an event or occurrence which leaves an impression on somebody.
yeah. I think that's the closest that comes, but then that for me does incorporate the other, at least one of the others, which was the practical contact with an observation of facts or events. It's a part of that event is that practical contact with facts. Yeah, maybe less about the knowledge or skill by a period of practical experience. Yeah, it's less that one. In fact, it's almost definitely not that one.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now we have a definition. So now what?
Now, what do we usually do?
We talk about the what, the why,
Yeah,
the how, and then the design thinker capability
mm,
implication.
some of the ways you think about or define experience.
So I think I have a very pragmatic view about experience. To me, it all comes down to how are you making someone feel?
Mm, hmm.
It all comes down to that
Yeah.
feeling. And even as someone that tends to be much more in her head than in her
Hmm.
feeling, we have to recognize that much of our decision making is driven by our feelings. There's plenty of research on this. This is not a Dani view. This is a very well researched fact that lots of our decisions are made based on feeling. Even when we think we're being objective, our feelings come into play.
Yeah.
Experience is important because the feelings that we have from an experience lead to buying decisions. It leads to whether we decide to take a job or not. It decides if we're going to buy this house or that house, this product or that product, if we're going to sign up for this or that,
Hmm.
if we're going to show up for an appointment. Experience determines all of any outcome that we want to create. The experience plays a big role in shaping that. I had to dwindle down what does experience mean? Experience comes down to the feeling. How does somebody feel when they engage with the thing that you're creating?
Yeah, it's really similar to mine, actually, summing up with this idea of designing for emotion and actually you're almost designing for nothing more, nothing but emotion, nothing experience, because that's what drives everything, like you've just described. What else do I think? Or maybe no, I agree. I'm only hesitating because what something you just said around it's one of the main drivers. I'm wondering if our experience is a bit of a thought experiment. Could be too early to do it in the episode, but is there anything other than our experience of something that drives the things you've just described? If experience is, I guess, the emotions, feelings resulting from the event or that's occurred or the thing that we've encountered, interacted with, the person, the service, the digital interface. For example, let's say we're trying to book a flight on an app. So I go online, sign up to the app, successfully book the flight that I want to book, and I get the relevant notifications and confirmations. I'm left feeling satisfied, confident that I'm going to get to the airport, be able to get on the plane. My concerns might, if it's a good experience, at least my concerns will be allayed. I feel like I'm dealing with a competent organization, maybe included in that. I might have satisfaction around the price that I managed to pay for the flight. I was trying to think of anything in that experience that is not a feeling.
Everything you're describing is an experience.
Uh-huh.
So the experience isn't just in the decision of booking that ticket.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
experience carries throughout that whole journey that you described.
Yeah.
Okay, I booked the ticket and that was a really good experience. Okay, I've
Mm,
gotten to the airport and I can check in really easily. That
mm,
was a really good experience.
mm,
So throughout that whole journey from booking your airplane ticket to arriving at your destination, you have
mm.
multiple experiences.
Yeah. The
And
experiences within the bigger experience. Is that the way you think about it as well?
yes,
Yeah, me too. I wonder if, and it's almost, I've come across this word a couple of times recently, fractal. It's almost like there's repeating patterns of experience in experiences that might last no more than a fleeting moment, and also repeating patterns of in an experience that might last, I don't know, like an experience, let's say, of studying towards an exam that end-to-end experience could be years long, right? But it's still it can be thought of, and I think of it as an end-to-end experience.
yep. So I like to think about it as macro and micro.
Yeah,
So there's the macro experience of a overseas trip.
yeah,
And then there are micro experiences within that trip.
yeah, nice. Macro experience, as in I'm gonna be leaving on holiday, then I come back from holiday. I'm gonna have a great time traveling, experiencing new things, meeting friends and family, and then within that, I'm gonna have experiences such as an in-flight meal, trying a new cocktail in a bar, etc., etc.
Even things like onboarding the plane, offboarding the plane, getting your luggage, unpacking
Yeah,
your luggage, packing your luggage, all
yeah,
of these little micro experiences that build up to the overall experience. This is where something like customer experience, you have
mm,
to be really clear about, okay, there's going to be the overall customer experience. When you engage with this brand, what is that experience? But that
yeah,
experience is informed by all these little other experiences, right? So when I
yeah,
go on your website to look at products, what is that experience like? What is that experience like now if I go into a store, assuming
mm,
that this is a company that has a store and an online presence?
yeah, yeah,
All of those things. So every time somebody goes on the website, every time somebody sees something on social media, every time somebody walks into a store, every time somebody wants to return a product, buy a product, those are all opportunities to create experience.
yeah. Every time somebody sees your billboard as they're driving past it on the motorway. Yeah.
And this is where sometimes I get a little bit cross when we talk about CX or customer experience or people
Mm-hmm.
experience,
Mm,
is that we tend to think it's these big things.
mm,
And oftentimes, what really the impressions that are left behind for people are
mm.
the little things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Think about something like a bank.
Mm,
All banks generally do the same thing. I know they all have supposedly different value propositions, but really, you hold my money and keep it safe. That's like what I expect from you. You lend money so I can buy my house. You lend money so I can whatever. And then you hold on to my other money.
yeah,
Give me a safe place to put it. But the real differentiators come down to those micro moments, right? When I walk into a branch, what is the experience from the staff? Do I feel like when I walk in, people know me?
yeah,
What's the experience when I have to talk to somebody? Am I on hold for 8 hours trying to get my question answered?
yeah.
Those kind.
Nice. You've made me think of something else I consider when I'm thinking about experience, or the definition of it, or what encompasses is all of our sentences, all of our all of our senses.
All of
So
your, yeah.
all of our senses. So you walk into that bank branch, or maybe more viscerally, or you walk into a restaurant, um, and a well-designed experience, I think, takes into account all of your senses and maybe pays attention to the senses that are most important in that moment. So let's say you walk into a branch, a bank branch, what it smells like might be important, but maybe not quite as important as what a restaurant smells like when you first walk into that. Likewise, walking into a bank branch, I think seeing, your sense of sight, your visual, what you see is probably just as important as a restaurant. But yeah, these are our five senses. I think we should be thinking about all of them when we're considering an experience.
Yeah, if I walk into a restaurant, I want to smell food. It would be really
Yeah.
weird if you walk into a restaurant and you're just hit with very flowery perfume smell. We tend to confuse
Mm.
standards of expectation
Hmm.
with creating good experiences. What I mean by that is if I walk into a restaurant, I want to see it clean. It needs to
Hmm.
smell of food, but it needs to
Hmm.
be a good smell of food, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to walk in and see or smell rotting food or
Yeah.
burning food. And those contribute to experiences, but those are also standards. You expect your restaurants to be clean. You expect your banks to be safe.
Mm.
You expect if you have an online store, I expect to be able to shop on it and you keep my credit card information safe. What happens is often we take the standard of expectation and go, oh, we're going to build an experience around that. That's not what an experience is. That's just meeting customer expectations.
Yeah.
That contributes to the experience because if the standard that I'm expecting is I want to buy this product online, you've told me I can buy it online, but when I go to buy it online, it's not online.
Mm.
Or you've told me that everything I see online, I could walk into a store and buy, and I walk into a store and it's not there. That's a standard of expectation, but when it's not met, it creates a poor experience.
Yeah.
But those aren't the what's going to win it. Like you have to do the standards right.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I've got different words to describe the same thing. Something that agitates me, stroke annoys me, stroke it's always something that catches my attention to have a conversation about is this when the royal we again, we talk about experience, it's almost unspoken that this word means it's something that, in your words, exceeds expectations or it is exceptional or is memorable because it is unique and special and let's use the restaurant example. It means that every meal you get your birthday cake in it with sparklers. There's something special about it. Whereas I think that's an unhelpful kind of definition or view of this word of customer or people or user experience. I think a lot of the time experiences, like you're saying, I think they just need to meet expectations. They need to be almost not memorable. They just happen. They just meet expectations. They help us achieve the job we're trying to do, trying to accomplish, and let us get on with our lives. And the counter to that, the opposite to that, what that means is they can't be bad. They just need to meet a minimum kind of standard of expectation. Yeah, maybe you can help me articulate this better, but on the one hand, experiences do not need to be memorable, exceptional. Some organizations talk about signature moments, or they don't and can't all be like that. But on the other hand, they shouldn't be, can't be. I'll use the word, this really simple word, bad, as in they don't meet expectations, or there's something in it that makes it memorable, but for the wrong reasons. I think that's. I know that it's a strange. I don't know, there's a bit of a tension there in that generally we just need to make things okay. And then we can spend the time and effort that we've got spare after we've fixed everything, just making a few things that find out what the important micro experiences are within a bigger experience and focus our attention on making those exceptional and memorable for the right reasons.
Yeah, so where a lot of when we talk about CX or customer experience or people experience or whatever
Mm,
experience you talk about,
mm,
where we tend to go wrong is the focus ends up being on the exceptional.
mm.
What are we going to do that is exceptional without going, actually, are we meeting the standard expectations?
Yeah, yeah,
The standard expectations gets you into the game.
yeah, yeah,
And until you've done that, you're not in the game. This idea of experience tends to be frustrating is that If the foundation isn't good, anything you add to that is just gonna, it's not gonna give you the results you want because fundamentally, it's not delivering what people are expecting.
Yeah, yeah. Can we think of a bit of an example, or just use a story? So maybe, yeah, the going on holiday story. You might have a great sign up experience. You might have a really great check-in experience, but if your flight doesn't actually take off or it doesn't take off on time and you miss your next flight, then it doesn't really matter
Or your
about the
flight
kind of
has
before.
to return because something's wrong with the plane.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Which is the right thing to do, but the
yeah,
expectation when you buy a flight is that the planes are serviced and kept up
yeah.
to date so that they can fly safe. You have all of these expectations, and until you're meeting those, then it doesn't
Mm.
matter how great the booking process is. If all of your flights are delayed or canceled,
Yeah,
what's the point?
yeah, yeah,
If we're putting a little checklist together, the
mm,
first element of creating a good experience is really understanding what are the standard expectations people have of this? And
mm,
that this could be a retail experience, it could be you're a bank, whatever it is, whatever your
mm,
niche that you're operating in is, what are the standard expectations that people have? Then being honest, are we meeting those standard expectations? If the answer is no, and
mm.
I'm willing to bet probably 95% of the time, it's going to be a no. Well,
Yeah.
let's get that. And then build. So that's step number one. Now, this is not to dismiss, there are moments, and we talk about this concept of moments that matter, and they do exist.
Hmm.
Once you have your foundation right, the next thing is to understand what are those moments that actually matter to customers, and how can we be sure that we're showing up for customers in those moments that matter? For every industry, there's moments that matter. If you're a bank, the moments that matter are going to be things like when a customer is going through hardship or when a customer is facing a big life event. That could be something like buying a new house,
Hmm.
expanding your family. So once you've got the foundation built where you're meeting the standards of expectations, the next thing is to understand what are the moments that matter to customers and how do we elevate that?
The expectations, what are the moments that matter? I suppose woven or inherently part of both of those are what is the customer or the team member person we're designing for, what are they actually trying to do? What's the thing they are trying to accomplish that they're using our product, service, etc. for? Do you think is that kind of woven into those two things, or is it a separate thing?
No, that's essential to understanding experience, right? If you don't
Yeah,
understand what your customers are trying to do, then what's it for?
yeah, yeah.
And this is another area where we go wrong when we're trying to
Mm,
create experiences. We don't understand what it is our customers want to do.
mm. And following a theme, maybe we do understand it at a quite high level, but we don't spend the time and effort to understand at the detailed level. So, for example, we might understand that customers want to buy. So, if we're a bank, we'll understand customers want to take out a home loan, take a mortgage, but we might not understand until we get down to the level of detail that when they are signing on, like actually sitting down and signing that mortgage in that moment, that what they want to do is, yes, borrow money, but to take out a mortgage with a sense of trust that gives them peace of mind that they're doing the right thing. So, in my mind, that's where the kind of the detail, the level of detail we're focusing on kind of changes depending on the level of experience we're thinking about and designing. But then ultimately, everything comes down to those small details. So, for example, if I'm designing an experience where customers are signing up to borrow hundreds of thousands and more dollars to buy a house, then I would be thinking about what's the room like they're sitting in, what's the seating arrangement, what sort of pen are they using? Am I expecting the bank teller to take out their chewed kind of ballpoint pen and hand it over to the customer, or am I going to actually give that bank teller a special pen that they only get out when customers are signing up for a mortgage, and maybe it's a nice fountain pen or a nice roller ball. Oh, guess what, customer? You get to keep that. It's that level of detail. I can't remember why I started. I got a lot. I was there, Danny. I don't know if you could tell. I was sitting down signing a mortgage with that pen in that room. I got lost. Why did
But
I start telling that story?
it's a good story to tell because there's there's lots of experiences that have led to that moment where you're sitting down
Hmm,
signing those documents, which feels, and it's a big moment. You're literally
hmm,
signing up for hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're committing to pay back. And
hmm.
you can make that moment feel like it's a moment of anxiety for people. It's a moment of excitement, but you could really make that moment feel special because it's also, look, you've saved up to buy a house and you've done all the right things to
Yeah,
get to the point
yeah.
to be able to get a mortgage. Like those are big accomplishments in life. And we can make really memorable moments out of that. And what that does is, so, okay, you've got somebody that's already committed and you've created this really special moment. Now that customer feels like, wow, this
Hmm,
bank is really caring about where I am in moments.
yeah.
What that means now, though, is what happens when interest rates change and they're looking to maybe refinance or they're looking to buy a second place or their friends are starting to buy houses. What is how does that experience translate to other experiences?
I was going to ask you actually, what when you have a great experience, what's one of the things that you do?
Well, when I have a really great experience, I tell people about it.
Yeah,
But here's the thing, when I
yeah,
have a crap experience, guess
yeah,
what?
yeah. You tell even more
I'm
people
also
about it.
telling you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Nice, nice. So whether you were given the lovely aluminium turned ballpoint pen, or whether you were given the half-chewed blunt pencil with the snapping lead, you're going to tell people about it.
There are some brands that I am very, very loyal to because
Hmm.
of the way they showed up in the moments that matter. I often tell the story about why I'm such a diehard Apple fan. I don't know if I've
Hmm.
told. It started in primary school for me when they came out with their Think Different campaign.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because I was a weird kid,
Uh-huh.
and I remember seeing those commercials and going,
Huh.
but that is an experience in itself, right? So when you think about, okay, you want to create a great ad campaign, really understanding who, and this is the thing that people don't get. Apple understands who their customers are.
Yeah.
They really understand who their customers are, and they're the weird ones. And they understood that from day one. So really creating things that speak to them, that creates an experience.
Well, that's a great example actually of you don't even need to be a direct customer or even a user of a company or an organization to actually have an experience of that organization or of that brand. Yeah, good story. Okay, where are we at? So we've done our word definition, our etymology, Latin, experire, to try, and we've talked about standards and expectations and customer needs or jobs they're trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
What else might be in our checklist of, we talked about senses, feelings. It's like a good list. It's definitely
The micro, macro.
micro, macro, yeah, different levels, different spans of time and different levels of detail to consider and pay attention to. There is something else my brain considers or it almost defaults to when we think about experience, and that's the peak end rule, which I know you know about, and I might have talked about it in other episodes, but maybe somebody's listening for the first time. So shall I talk a little bit about the peak end rule?
Yes, please. We can't
Is it
talk
the
about experience without talking
ah
about.
awesome? That's great to hear. So peak end rule is a psychological heuristic backed up by research. Tell the story of the research in a second. And what the peak end rule says is that I think it says a couple of things, but I could be conflating some pieces of research or science. Well, the first thing is that what we describe as experience is actually, by definition, our memory of something that's happened. We're not a philosophy podcast, so that's probably where I'll leave that one. But it's just useful to always remember that it's literally a memory, any experience we have. The peak end rule, the research showed that our memory of what's occurred, our experience, is dependent mainly on two moments during that experience. The first one is the peak moment during that experience. So peak is a kind of elevation or a high word, but it could also be the trough. So it's like the peak or the trough of that experience. And then the second thing is how it ends. And the first time I heard about peak end rule, the research that was described to me was endoscopy experiences. So the research was done by some psychologists and they interviewed people who'd experienced endoscopy and they asked them to describe the experience and I think rate their surgeons as well. And they discovered that the surgeons who were rated the highest for a good experience of endoscopy procedures turned out that they were the most careful not to have any sudden uncomfortable sensations for the patient during the procedure. And also, they were also the most careful about, how can I put this delicately, how the procedure ended. I actually have personal experience of, for endoscopy, my experience was very, you can tell I'm speaking positively already, but I have positive memories of my endoscopy. I think during the procedure, my kind of peak moment was just as they began and the sedatives really kicked in. And then afterwards, the thing that I remember the most is having a nice conversation with the very jolly, pleasant surgeon who told me how it had all gone, eating what I remember to be the best, the most amazing, tastiest cheese and egg sandwich I had ever tasted in my life. So if anyone ever asked me who to go for, I would send them his way. Um, so that's peak end rule. So translated from endoscopy experiences and cheese and egg sandwiches to, let's say, a service industry, there's a great example. I believe it's Four Seasons Hotel chain used peak end rule for a really neat example of the difference that one word can make. So let's say you're staying at a Four Seasons hotel and you call up for room service. Maybe you've seen an egg and cheese sandwich on the menu and you're like, want to reminisce about your endoscopy experience. You phone up for room service and you order your sandwich. Now, at any other hotel chain, they would probably say something like, "So, egg and cheese sandwich, Ms. Chesson. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" And to which you would say, "What would you
No,
say if no, yeah?" Or
that's
what Four
all. I'm
Seasons?
good.
So no, thank you, I'm good. No, but Four Seasons staff are trained to say, "Have I helped you with everything that I can right now, Ms. Chesson?" To which your answer would be,
Yes.
yes. Okay. So they've done research into customer satisfaction around how do people feel finishing on the
The
no
yes.
versus finishing on the yes. And surprise, people feel a lot better about the experience by finishing with a positive word. They are saying it. They're saying yes instead of no, but there's a measurable difference in people's um, experience and their satisfaction, their willingness to recommend this hotel chain based on that simple interaction and that simple switch off word from yes to no.
I often think that the peak end rule is a very missed thing when it
Mm,
comes to creating experience
mm,
because we tend to focus on the beginning of things, right?
mm,
And the thing is, the beginning of everything is exciting. Well, not everything. Beginning
mm,
of most things is very exciting.
mm.
There's the anticipation of what's to come. There's the you're
Yeah.
starting something new. There's all of this good energy around beginning.
Mm, mm,
Middle, and I often call it the mucky middle because
mm.
middle is where things get messy, things get
Yeah.
hard. If you think
Yeah.
about anything from buying a house is a great example. The middle is
Yeah.
very messy because it's a lot of freaking paperwork.
Yeah.
And
Or sorry or let's say you are ordering room service, then what would you like today? Oh, sorry, we don't have that. Or would you like that on rye, on white, on wholemeal? You're like, oh God, I just want a sandwich. Sorry to interrupt, because you're right,
that,
and actually you're like, I'll keep going because you this is great, this is good.
so you've got the messy middle,
Mm,
and then the end gets ignored
mm,
because It's just seeing as, oh, we're just going to wrap things up. And things like paying the bill at the end of a great restaurant experience. What is the experience for customers? They've come in, they've had this fantastic meal,
Hmm.
and now they're leaving. What is that last impression they're going to walk away with?
Yeah, yeah,
Another example, and this is like a very big pet peeve of mine, is the offboarding experience for employees.
yeah,
Had
yeah,
a fantastic career, you've done all these great things, you've had a good impression, and then you go to leave and it's this very clunky, all right, see ya. Did you get your badge turned in?
yeah,
Like it's this
yeah,
very or sometimes, and we see this when there's restructuring and stuff, where you're treated really badly. This trusted performing employee is now escorted out like,
yeah.
they're
You're
gonna
like,
rob the
oh,
place.
all this time I've just been a number. Everything
Yeah,
else was just an illusion.
exactly.
Yeah, I imagine that's what it feels like anyway.
There are these opportunities. And then what happens? That
Yeah,
person leaves,
yeah,
and that's the last thing they
yeah,
remember. So what
yeah.
happens when somebody asks, oh, you used to work there. I'm applying for a job there. What was it like?
What was
The
your
first
experience? Yeah, yeah,
the first thing that's going to come to your mind is, well, it was great, but they were terrible when I left,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. Always finish on a high. As a complete sideline, but having left a few, not that many, but a few of our organizations, I've always taken a moment to design my own leaving experience, like that, as in like leaving the building and like what I choosing to do something that's memorable and positive for me, so that I can have ownership of that. Anyway, coming back on track. Thank you. That was really. I loved what you just described. Is it the messy middle? Or what did you call it? Was it the messy middle?
Yep.
Um, but in particular, the beginning of something, because I think you're right. We do tend to, if we don't think about it, we don't take a step back and pause, and if we're not paying attention to the peak end rule, we will overinvest in the beginning of something because we've forgotten about or don't understand it. And yeah, it's almost. I think what the peak end rule tells us. I've never really thought about it before. What it's telling us something. What's it not telling us, or what's the opposite of that? And the opposite is the beginning is not especially important or memorable. But don't make it the trough. Don't make it really bad because it's going to be the most memorable bad part. But you don't need to make it stupendous. Um.
Again, it
Uh.
comes back to the beginning needs to meet the basic
Yeah.
standards
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
expectation.
Yeah.
But generally, with most things, beginnings are an exciting time
Yeah.
to begin. So we don't have to put a lot of effort into that. But I think where it counts is that middle point
Yeah.
and the end.
You got me thinking. I'll do some reading around it. I wonder if the beginning is not as memorable because we are either excited or anticipating something. I used to work in a call center for several years, and we were trained to remember and realize that the first few words you say to something on a phone call either are indiscernible or completely immemorable. So almost come up with something that doesn't need to be remembered. So don't tell somebody your name as one of the first few words that you say. Say something else and then tell them who you are. Okay, thanks for letting me talk about peak end rule.
Let's do a recap. We talked
Yeah,
about first step is understanding what are the standard expectations that you have to meet.
yeah.
Then it was understanding the moments that matter.
Hmm.
Then we talked about peak and rule. What else?
Maybe something else about an experience, and it has been implicit in probably everything we've talked about, but as an organization, delivering an experience to somebody or people, or we'll keep it to human beings, you only have control of part of that. I was going to say half of that. Maybe it is half of that. Let's keep it simple, say half. And that half is what you are doing. The other half is completely and utterly out of your control because the experience that somebody has of your product or service or brand or anything is just as dependent on everything else that has happened. And I go to a little bit extremes on this, but every single thing that has happened in that person's life up to that moment that they're experiencing your product or service actually has an influence to a lesser or greater degree on the experience they're having of your product and service. It's almost like two kind of arrows coming together, or the pointy end of a double diamond. Seems we're design thinkers and we know about double diamonds, but the pointy end is going from left to right of a double diamond. That dot, if you like, in the middle of the the double diamond where one ends and one begins. That could be the moment of experience, and both the organization's kind of life up to that point and the person's life up to that point meet there. And then as it expands out again on the other side of the diamond, that's what's happening to both the person and the organization after they've had that experience. Pulling some good faces while she's listening to this. So I'm looking forward to what she says in reply to that.
Well, as a design thinker and a researcher, you mentioned it's 50% and then 50% depending on the person.
Yeah.
But the more that we can understand our customers,
Mm-hmm.
the more we can increase
Mm-hmm.
how much of the
Yeah.
experience we control. One of my jobs is I teach first year doctoral students research statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And I have spent a lot of time. Well, one, I have first-hand experience of what it's like to be a first-year doctoral student.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I've designed and how I've structured that course and how the materials that I present, the examples that I present, it comes from an understanding of what it's like to be at that point in your doctoral journey and the anxieties you have, the fears you have, the imposter syndrome you're challenged with, really understanding those things.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that when I do those sessions, there's nothing, there's no numbers, there's no formulas,
Yeah.
because that's the thing that scares people away from statistics. But that's not what I need you to learn in the first year. The first year, I need you to learn the foundations, concepts. These are all words
Mm-hmm.
about statistics so that later on in your journey, you can learn those things. But if you don't understand the fundamentals of what a p-value is or what R is, then
Yeah.
so if I present you with formulas on day one, I know you're not going to get it because I was sitting in that chair and formulas were presented to me. And I was like, what the hell? This is not for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Nice.
share that as a concrete example to say that the more we learn, so because I have that understanding of who shows up to those sessions, I've been able to create, it still means that there are some students that go through that and still have a bad experience or still walk away going, statistics is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't control that, but it just means that I have more control because I've taken, and I don't want to say control because I'm not controlling the students, but I have control over the experience I can create for them
Mm-hmm.
because I understand them.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, nice. You've helped open my mind to maybe 50% is the starting point. Actually, maybe for some organizations, 50% could be an aspiration, couldn't it, to have control? But yes, understanding and acknowledging that what this person might have been through before they arrive at your store, on your website, et cetera, is vital.
Well, yeah, because you can't create something for somebody you don't understand.
Yeah, nice.
So, but that works on a spectrum. There will be some scenarios where you just need to know your customers a little bit because that'll get you going. But then once you get going, you need to learn about your customers more because that's going to
Mm.
take you to the next step.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is why I
Uh,
talk about this idea of customer research and understanding your customers. It's not a point in time thing.
mm.
It's an evolution. It needs to continuously happen.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like the idea of getting to know them just enough to begin with and then continuing to get to know them better and better so that you can meet their needs better and better. I love it.
One thing we have to accept is you cannot know everything about everything. So,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
translates to customers. You could research customers for the rest of your life and still not understand them fully.
yeah.
So it's about knowing how much do I need to know to get started, and then how much do I need to know to get to the next level, and then how much do I need to know to get to the next level.
Nice, nice. I like it. That feels like we're segueing into, well, we covered off why is it, well, hopefully people have picked up on why this is important. If you want to be a successful organization of any kind, whether you're a business selling products or an education provider or health service or a not-for-profit, any kind, you need to understand who you're trying to help and what they need, and yeah, start to meet those needs by creating experiences that help them and that work for them, etc. Yeah.
There used to be that saying, if you build it, they will come. That's no
Mm,
longer true.
no.
What you have to do is you've got to create the experience that appeals to them, and then they will show up.
And they'll start telling other people.
Hmm.
Cool. What else have we not covered that's important?
We did the how and the why kind of intermingled on
Mm,
this, but just to recap, if you want to attract and retain customers and grow customers, experience is important. I know
mm,
we've talked a lot on this today about customer, but this also applies to employees.
yeah, definitely.
Great for your employees. Whether you're working with employees or customers, the principles of experience, it's consistent. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're trying to attract and retain customers, you're trying to attract and retain employees. Those two things stay constant for
Yes. And the experience that your people have, the employee experience, has a direct and unbreakable connection with your customer's experience. Whether that person is a customer-facing person, whether they are writing lines of code or anything in your organization, there's a direct relationship between the two things.
And what I always say is if you want a good customer experience, you've got to have a great employee
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, 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 yeah. Nice.
Should we talk about which design thinker capabilities
Oh
most?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's do that. I'd almost forgotten that most important part. Well, definitely empathetic exploration.
Absolutely empathetic. I don't think you can have experience in design without empathetic exploration. Unless you're designing for yourself, but in that case, you still probably need to do some exploration still.
Definitely.
And being true to the root, to the history of the word experience, I
Hmm.
think curious experimentation.
Oh, absolutely. You can't. It's unlikely that whatever experience you create for somebody in the first place is going to be absolutely the right thing straight away. So having that iterative experimental capability is essential. The old favorite, situation optimizing. I think we have to believe that we can make somebody's life better in some way, whether that their experience of your product or your service or whatever else you're creating, or a combination of two things, the product and the service together. I mean, they're all important, aren't they? But I'm going to touch on collective collaboration because I think it takes. Let's go back to the restaurant example. Um, it's not just about the chef, is it? Your experience of a restaurant is about so many more people than just what the chef is creating. So you need to, any organization, we need to collaborate with all of our colleagues in their different fields of expertise to design and orchestrate an experience for our customers, our team members.
Nice. Yep, and that translates to other contexts as well. Like employee experience isn't really driven by the CEO. I mean, it is,
Hmm.
but it's not solely driven by the CEO. It's about the peers, the manager, the
Yeah,
people reporting up to you. All of these things play a role. So I think collective
yeah.
collaboration. And like you said, all of these capabilities are relevant and important. And we could go through all of them and talk
Hmm.
about ways that they're tying in. But
Hmm.
I think the point of this is what's most important here, just to keep it
Yeah,
count.
nice.
What is your takeaway?
My takeaway, definitely the aha moment around peak end role and what it's not saying. It's just as important as what it is saying. So that beginning stage idea that I talked about earlier. So thank you for that. That's what I'm going to take away. How about you?
Actually, mine is also bacon roll,
Oh yeah,
which was your original. You raised that, so thank you. Specifically around pecan roll, I think it's something, and maybe we do an episode on pecan roll at one point. I think it's something that we really easily forget.
yeah, Yeah.
and just being more deliberate about thinking about how can we end things on a
Yeah.
higher
On
note.
with people on a high. Nice, Danny. That's a nice question, nice positive question to end on. Have you talked about everything you want to talk about today? Have you enjoyed your podcast experience today?
Oh, nice. I think the first question, because if you ask me, have I enjoyed my podcast experience? What if I
Hmm,
say no? It's terrible.
I know. Well, you could say no to the other question as well, can you? It's just I realized as the words were coming out of my mouth, I'm playing a bit of a risky game there.
Yes, I have talked about everything I wanted to
Okay.
talk about today. Have you talked about everything you wanted to talk about?
Yes, I have, Danny. And I hope our listeners have enjoyed our conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thanks for listening. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Danny. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.